Hello, my name is Tim Bernard, and this is Beyond the Headlines, where we may take a much more in-depth look and to look at subjects that the bought-off press does not even cover. This is my website where there's far more information. I generally put up anywhere from 10 or more new articles every day or every other day. Now, this is not the propaganda press. There's been a lot of press about Brian Williams here and his embellishing of a story. Well, believe me, that's nothing compared to the stories, A, that they do lie about, and that all of the media hide from you and do not tell you. But let's continue on, because these mini docs are going to take up the bulk of the time. But first, we're going to take a very, very quick look at some Super Bowl stuff and just how infested we are with evil. Here is Katy Perry telling everyone that she has sold her soul to the devil.
You're doing really well now, but didn't you release a CD like almost 10 years ago?
Yeah, I mean, I released a gospel record when I was 15 because I grew up in, a household where all I ever did was listen to gospel music, and my parents are both traveling ministers, and so I kind of sang about, what was going on in my life at 15, and that's how I got introduced to the music industry. I swear I wanted to be like the Amy Grant of music,
Yeah.
but it didn't work out, and so I sold my soul to the devil. Sold my soul to the devil.
And believe me, if you ask, they come in, and that's why she's prospered. We've done tons of stuff on that. I have links to more explicit stuff showing like her Grammy performance last year, Dark Horse, totally demonic, and even stuff in her Super Bowl thing where there was Illuminati influence. So you should check that out. Now here's another disgusting thing that happened at a mass just north of us here in Marysville. Here it is. Now that is not the sacred Mass. There's nothing wrong with doing Seahawk chants, but not during the sacred liturgy. Now, this first documentary has been going on, and you need just one thing to prep. I would urge you to check into Jonathon Cahn's other work that he's done, especially the Isaiah 9:10 prophecy and the harbingers, the warnings. This is a warning, and it's very late. There's some very important stuff here, so I hope you're getting ready, because this isn't going to be just prophecy. He's going to show this historically, how this has just been manifesting itself as we enter into and are in the 7th year, the Shemitah year. Now here is this, and I hope you take heed of the warning.
The bells were tolling there in New York. It was like all these warnings, and you shared with us that the bells are equal to the shofar.
Yeah, the instrument of alarm in the Bible, it wasn't bells, it was the shofar. The warning of an attack was the shofar, it was the watchman. And then when you go to Philadelphia to see that famous Liberty Bell,
yeah,
it has the scripture on it. It says, you'll proclaim liberty to the nation, well, or through the land. Well, that's from Leviticus 25, which is referring to the shofar. So the Liberty Bell is the American shofar, a version of the shofar.
So when we heard those bells for 30 minutes going, it was like the shofar was being sounded. I wish I could make that noise. Sound the shofar while I'm talking. But the shofar, it was like God was warning America. And if you didn't get that show, no. And it would be like the shofar, like God was having the shofars blown, saying, America, wake up! America, wake up! Isn't that, Rabbi, that is so real what he was...
Yeah.
And that's the message. And when you order this week of the special, the mysteries for the days ahead, we're including that whole tour of the Harbingers Revisited.
Yeah.
The up-to-date and miracles and all that video there for a gift of $55. But God's trying to wake America up, Rabbi.
Yeah.
I know
He
He's
is.
trying to wake us up. And the Harbinger has taken on a life of its own as the ministry, the mysteries continue to grow.
Yeah. Yeah, and we just were talking before, and there were, just in the last 4 days, there were some major articles that came out.
What was it? We read in the newspaper
Yesterday. Just came out yesterday.
And this is a warning, and this is so updated of what's going on right now.
This one says a return to 2007. Now remember, 2007 began the last Shemitah.
Yes.
It says, and then it says 5 reasons why markets are heading for a crash. Hold on to your hats. Stock markets look much as they did in, listen to these dates, 2000 and 2007. Those are the last 2 Shemitahs, the beginning of the crash in both times. So they're linking it without realizing it to the 7 years and the 7 years. And they asked, was what happened in the beginning, was it a premonition when it happened in September, which I'm going to talk about. So there's several articles on that.
Like this one right here. It says this is the headline. Guess what happened the last time the price of oil crashed like it is right now? It says there's only been one other time in history when the price of oil has crashed by more than $40 in 6 months. The last time this happened was in 2008. At the beginning of that oil price crash preceded the great financial collapse that happened later that year. Well, now it's happening again. But this time the stakes are even higher. When the price of oil falls dramatically, that is a sign that economic activity is slowing down. It can also have a tremendously destabilizing effect on financial markets. And this headline right here from the Telegraph, it says 5 reasons why markets are heading for a crash.
So more people are discovering.
Yeah. Well, there's warning because it's like a double thing. Because on one hand, there are people saying, "Oh, this is the stock market's going up," and that's like I believe it's a house of cards. And then you have other ones saying, "Wait a minute, these are the same warning signs we got the last time it happened." Are there other people on Wall Street who have noted this 7-year cycle that's from the Bible? That's from that article. Those are the last 2 Shemitahs right there in red, right there. And if you guys have image LMNOP, if you got that, just put them right after one after the other. That's one right there. Look at it. It's a 7-year. This is secular 7-year crashes right there.
They call it the 7-year itch.
Yeah. And then can we do the next one? And there's another one. That's the stock market, and each one's divided by just about almost all the time, about 7 years of crashes. Next one. There's another one. It notes these crashes of the last 40 years, and each one, that's 1980, 87, 94, 2001, exactly the Shemitahs, all there. This is not Christian. This is Wall Street. Next one.
Wow.
There's another, again, it says a 7.25 year cycle. Same thing, and I think there's one more. But these are again secular. Again, see that it's 7-year. These are the last crashes, all on the Shemitahs, not just 7 years, but the Shemitahs. So there is an awareness, but they don't know that this is the Shemitah. They just know, hey, look, there's something happening there. But it's not only 7 years, as the Bible says. It's on the exact appointed time of the Bible. So now we've come to this. Now Shemitah has begun. And the last time the Shemitah began, the last times, particularly the last one, there was a foreshadow of things to come.
I think actually 2 of them.
Yeah. Well, there was, I mean, actually, and
that you said, there was a foreshadow.
Yeah, well, there was a foreshadow. In 2007, the stock market had been going up and up since the Shemitah before. And then as it started, the very first day, that first day of the Shemitah, there was a foreshadow, because what happened that day, September, I believe it was September 13th of 2007, that day, suddenly there was the first bank failure happened on that day, which is called Northern Rock in England. It was the beginning of a year later when and everything would crash, 2008. It was a foreshadow of all the collapses that would happen then, but it happened on the day of the opening of the Shemitah. It was like a first fruit foreshadow. In that first month of 2007, the stock market that had been going up and up and up suddenly started turning around. It was subtle at first and began to go down, and then at the end of the year it just crashed. So you have the principle of foreshadow. So could there have been any foreshadows of things happening since the Shemitah began? The Shemitah came on September 25th. It began. Any significant things? So let me give you a number of things already just with that. First thing that happened. Just before the Shemitah began, now this is, remember, Shemitah can mean fall, and sometimes it can also refer to a spiritual fall, as we saw with America. Just before the Shemitah began, 19 states had ended the biblical definition of marriage. That's a minority. 31 states had held on. The Shemitah began within the first few weeks. The Supreme Court made a decision not to defend or not to take up the defense of marriage. What happened is right within days, it went from 19 to 32 states that had ended the definition of marriage. It went from the minority to the majority. And now it stands at 36 states. This is the greatest movement in this movement of America, the greatest we have ever seen. It happened in the first 2 weeks of the Shemitah. Now that's one. That's more. Yeah. Another thing that happened, we saw at the beginning, just in the first 8 months, is we mentioned this, is the tower opened up. Here we said, keep your eyes on the tower. The tower opened up, not dedicated yet, but it is, I believe that this thing is going to be completely finished in the Shemitah. But something else happened. The stock market that had always been ascending, something strange happened in September, and that is that all of a sudden Wall Street began to reel violently, and nobody could explain it. It just started shaking and descending and crashing, and they said nobody could explain why it happened. Well, it began to happen on September. It was September 22nd, the week of September 22nd to September 26th. Guess what that week is? That was the opening week of the Shemitah. The Shemitah comes and Wall Street starts reeling, and I believe that, in one of these articles it said, was what happened at September, was that a premonition of what's going to happen? Well, with the Shemitah, the last one, the first thing that happened, it was a foreshadow. And then things seemed to be normal, but could it be a foreshadow? And then you had the greatest crash day of that week of violent reeling. That greatest crash day happened on September 25th, the opening day of the Shemitah. So the Shemitah opens and all this happens. One of the signs of judgment in the Bible is pestilence or plague. And could there have been a foreshadow of judgment in the form of that? Now, I'm not saying there's a simplistic connection. However, we're all aware of the outbreak of Ebola. We've talked about that. You've talked about that a lot. The first case of Ebola manifested in Texas. The day it manifested was the opening day of the Shemitah. The very
exact day,
September 25th, same day that Wall Street had the crash, same day, opening day of the Shemitah comes this. Could that be a foreshadow? On the opening day of the Shemitah comes the first. It is manifested for the first time in America. Now here's another thing there'd be enough. But there's enough. One of the signs of judgment or of warning is earthquakes, the quaking of the earth.
Yes.
And earthquakes, earthquake of an over 6 on the Richter scale happens about 5 times a year when it's over 6, or I'm not sure if that's America or the world. But so the chances are pretty against it any one day. But September, on the opening day of the Shemitah, an earthquake struck America over 6 on the Richter scale. On the same day, earthquake, pestilence, first sign of it, stock market, they're all on September 25th, the opening day, Tishri 1 of the Shemitah, day where last time what happened on that day was a foreshadow. Well, now you have several things. We touched on this before, but very important because what happened in the first 2 weeks of the Shemitah, and we noted that, and in the book it speaks of that even the destiny of nations are part of this, but we mentioned, and we have to realize it went right by the news. But one of the most significant things happened in world history is that the 140 years of America being the strongest economic power on earth, beginning 1871, came to its end in the second week of the Shemitah, when it announced that China had now overtaken America. So America was dethroned again by the second week of the Shemitah. But something else, there's another article that came out, And that is that I believe they may have this as image S and T, if I remember. And one is of China, of the overtaking of China, and the other one is the first week of the Shemitah. Though that's China overtaking America right there from that article, from the article right there at the second week of the Shemitah. And then something else happened, an article came out that America within 1 week of the Shemitah was overtaken by Russia militarily.
What?
Russia, as of the first week of the Shemitah, has more nuclear weapons deployed than America as the first week of the Shemitah. So you have all this happening at the opening, all that at the same time. And again, what happened last time is these were foreshadows.
If these are foreshadows,
then what is the real thing?
Yes, that's my question.
Yeah. Well, it speaks of the uncrowning of America as the head of nations. It speaks of a fall. It speaks of it may warn of an economic collapse, which we talked about, a financial collapse, but even a national change, a momentous change in world history. It is a warning of that, and more than that, and a shaking. Now, I want to share something with you that I will call this the mystery of the seventh cow. Okay. I've talked about it.
Yeah, we're ready to hear about this.
You're ready to hear that.
Yes.
I've heard of the holy cow, but I haven't heard of
I'm ready for this one, aren't you?
Mystery of the seventh cow.
Okay, here we go.
As a cycle of the rise or fall of an economy, that's the Shemitah, but it begins even before the Shemitah. Before Sinai, it first appears in the book of Genesis. The book of Genesis, it begins with the earliest mention, and actually the earliest mention of an economic cycle is in the book of Genesis, and it begins in Genesis 41 where the Pharaoh has a dream. The Pharaoh has a dream, and he sees 7 cows coming out of the river, probably the Nile. 7 cows. And the 7 cows are healthy. The Hebrew means, like well-fed and healthy. And then he says, he saw another 7 cows come up out of the river, and these were sickly, or the Hebrew can mean evil, or diseased, and lean, fat, like starved. They come up out of the river and they devour the 7 fat cows. He's troubled by it. So it says, well, what does this dream mean? He said, well, there's the Hebrew in prison who can discern dreams. It's Joseph. They bring Joseph to Pharaoh, and it says, then Joseph said to Pharaoh, the dreams of the Pharaoh are one. God has shown Pharaoh what he's about to do. The 7 good cows are 7 years. The 7 heads of grain are 7 years. The dreams are one. The 7 thin and ugly cows which came up after them are 7 years, and the 7 empty heads blighted to the east wind are 7 years of famine. This is the thing which I've spoken to Pharaoh. God has shown Pharaoh what he's about to do. Indeed, 7 years of great plenty will come throughout all the land of Egypt. But after them, 7 years of famine will come, and the plenty will be forgotten in the land of Egypt. The famine will deplete the land, so the plenty will not be known in the land because of the famine following it, for it will be very severe. This is the first economic cycle mentioned in the Bible, or probably anywhere, and guess what? It's based on 7 years, just like the Shemitah. Same thing. 7 years of abundance, that's the 7 cows, and then 7 years of famine or economic deprivation. And in the middle of that, the change is the 7th cow. It goes up to each year. Each year, the cow represents a year. Each year 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. When you get to the 7th cow, it's the 7th year. Represents the 7th year and the time when there's going to be a change from abundance to famine. Okay, so that's what you're watching. So now the Shemitah is also the 7th year. The Shemitah is the 7th year. And it also is linked to an economic cessation, just the same way. Now, God gave to Egypt, the first sign in the Bible of the economy, God gave them a warning. And the sign, if you put the two things together, you got cows and you got the number 7. 7 years and cows. Cows and number 7. And so that is this biblical symbol of warning. Now, we spoke about foreshadows. Could God have given America a warning of what is yet to be? Could he have? What I'm about to show you does not come from a prophecy site, doesn't come from a Christian site. It comes from the Associated Press Newswire, an image that was sent across the nation. Probably Now, well, now is probably the first time it's gone at once nationally right now. But I want you to now remember this biblical symbol. And if you have image V, put that up.
Oh my goodness.
That is the image that went across America. That is an image, that is a cow that was born a few days before the Shemitah with the number 7 across its head, clear as anything. Number 7 across the cow, and this number 7. In the Bible, that speaks of the 7th year there. And this is the biblical imagery of the elements given to Pharaoh and Joseph of a coming economic collapse, which was about to happen, and a famine. It appears now in America. Now, on what day did this sign appear on the Associated Press? When did it appear? It appeared on September 25th, the opening day of the Shemitah.
Oh my. Oh my.
Ooh. All across America, I mean, in one form, whoever picked it up, Associated Press, the symbol of the coming of economic collapse or famine, and the very opening day of the 7th year is the symbol. The cow represents the years, the 7 years as in the Bible, and the number 7, that on the beginning of the 7th year. So not only that ushered in, we talk about all things that ushered in the Shemitah, the same day that sign appeared, Wall Street crashes. Wall Street collapse. Same day that happens, there's an earthquake strikes America. Same day, within a week, all these things happen in the same. So, you know, the day they took that picture was September 24th, which was the eve. It began that evening of the Shemitah. So could it be?
Yes.
But it has things like, you know, cow, you know, the number 7, you know, appears the cow with the sign of the 7. One says, one headline reads, "Holy cow, what's on that calf's head?" you know, but it appeared all over. And could it, you know, and what that sign is biblically, if we just put down the biblical symbols, what that would speak about in ancient times, what happened in the time of Joseph, is not only the 7th year, but the change from abundance to deprivation. You know, and that is speaking of, you know, at least when it appeared that those symbols appeared to Joseph and Pharaoh, 7 years of famine or 7 years of deprivation. With that, could it be? Well, I wouldn't ignore that. I wouldn't ignore these things. That even the Associated Press didn't ignore this. You know, said that this is just too weird. But all these things happen. So the start of the Shemitah, you have within the first week, America is overtaken by Russia. Nuclear weapons. You have the Supreme Court and a giant fall, a massive transformation of America. You have America being eclipsed as the strongest economic power for the first time in over a century. You have the stock market reeling, and then the greatest crash happening on that day. You have the first appearance of the plague of Ebola on that day. You have all these things on that day or in the wake of that. I would not ignore the signs of this. This is the beginning of the 7th year, and already things are happening, and things are happening ominously.
Now we're going to get into the smart grid. This historical, it'll be historical, showing that this is nothing new. This is what's going on right now. They're debating right now about smart meters in Seattle. This is going on today. Here's a look at the smart grid. This is all in place, going on. This is stuff you need to know, you need to prepare for, because it's not coming, it's continuing to unfold. Now, here it is.
Those of you who know me a little bit, and some of you do, know that I have been pounding the pavement for almost 35 years on the issue of globalization, the global elite, and in particular, the machinations of a group known as the Trilateral Commission. With this new group back then that had just been started. This was a group, not government, it was a group of 300 people from around the world, actually about 186 to start, today 300. And there's about 1/3 of them from the United States and 1/3 from Europe and 1/3 from Japan. They met in plenary sessions to discuss and hammer out policies, and they voted for consensus, and they went back to their respective countries to implement the policies that they had basically created in secret. We found that they had released a plethora of written information. Nothing was ever hidden in particular, but Sutton knew how to get a hold of this stuff, so we got all their papers, all their published material, all their recordings that we could get our hands on, and we sifted, we analyzed. Tony was known in those days as the human vacuum cleaner. And we discovered that this group had as an intent to create a new international economic order. That was their words, not mine. New International Economic Order. It was later shortened to New World Order, mostly by George Bush I, when he started referencing it as the New World Order. But the New International Economic Order was a phrase created to guide their entire future. All the policies they wrote were scoped around that phrase. 3 years ago, I'm almost ashamed to say, I was doing some research and some reading, and I ran across a historical study that I had never ever heard of before called technocracy. But I'd never heard of technocracy before, and I was rather ashamed that I had missed such an important historical event. I'm convinced that Tony Sutton knew nothing about it either, or we would have been talking about it a long time ago. But technocracy as an organization was a group that was founded back in the 1930s in the heat of the Depression. And this was a group of scientists and engineers and no politicians to speak of, but scientists, engineers, technicians, and so on, that believed that capitalism was dead and that the resulting society needed to be managed by experts, that is them, the engineers, the scientists, and the technicians. And so they started this popular organization or popular movement called technocracy, and they actually incorporated it, called it Technocracy, Inc. They had over 500,000 card-carrying members across the country in the course of about 18 months. Technocracy was a movement that the world thought died in 1940, 1942, 45, somewhere in there, for numerous reasons. I can't go into them now. But it was removed and scrubbed from history. However, because of its academic beginnings at Columbia University, no less, the formal movement of technocracy kind of died out, although the organization is still in existence today. It's up in, actually physically based in Northwest Washington State. The movement, as a philosophy, lived on at Columbia University in the halls of academia. Can you picture that? Where the professors are still kind of talking about this stuff along the way, even though they're not allowed particularly to use the word technocracy. They're talking about the concepts and looking back at it, how ingenious it was. And so when we come to the Trilateral Commission in you say, what's this got to do with anything? When we come to the Trilateral Commission in 1973, when it was formed by two people, Zbigniew Brzezinski and David Rockefeller. Now, David Rockefeller, I'm convinced, never had an original thought in his life except just to own everything. They're masters at hijacking any kind of a good idea that's out there. And this idea of technocracy was an idea that I believed that Rockefeller and his crowd ended up hijacking for their own benefit. And you say, why do I say that? Zbigniew Brzezinski wrote a book in 1969 called Between Two Ages, subtitle, America's Role in the Technotronic Era. That meant nothing to me back in the 70s. It meant nothing to me in the 80s or 90s either. Until I started studying technocracy and really, and I did study it. I was fanatical for a while. My wife will testify that I went crazy for about 18 months studying technocracy. What I found out, looking backwards now at his book, and looking at what I discovered historically on technocracy today, is that Zbigniew Brzezinski was a technocrat. So I went back and I reread his book, Between Two Ages, in light of what I learned about technocracy and all of their original writings, and lo and behold, I find out that the book just parallels exactly what they said in 1932. You follow what I'm saying? Okay? Same themes, same concepts, in some cases the same phraseology. He just used the word technotronic to replace technocratic. I want to show you today, going backwards and forwards a little bit about smart grid. I want to show you that smart grid is a subset of technocracy. Smart grid is local, national, and global. This will absolutely blow your mind, but you'll see where we're going here. Smart grid is interdependent with sustainable development and global warming. It's part and parcel of the whole mix that we're talking about here. Let me define briefly, just to kind of give you an idea, what is smart grid? This is an industry definition, not mine. I didn't make this up. This comes out of literature. In fact, everything I'm showing you comes out of their literature. A smart grid delivers electricity from suppliers to consumers using two-way digital technology to control appliances at consumers' homes to save energy, reduce costs, increase reliability, and transparency. It sounds nice, doesn't it? Secondly, it's a nickname, another way to look at it, it's a nickname for an ever-widening palette of utility applications that enhance and automate the monitoring and control of electrical distribution. Okay? Now, I know most of you are pretty much in sync of this already. Here's an idea of this idea of smart grid. And you can see up here, over here where we have the meter, it's a little fuzzy, but there's the power meter in your house, and this blue ellipse right here is called the HAN, the Home Area Network. It's kind of like a little bit like the internet, but the Home Area Network just means you locally. It's connected to your itty-bitty, weeny-teeny electric car that you're all going to own someday. And your washer and dryer and your thermostat, and maybe you'll be driving your dryer, I don't know. But all the electrical things in your home are connected to the meter, which in turn goes out and connects to the power pole. And the idea is that the meter communicates in both directions with everything in your home and everything in the utility outside the home. The green ellipse is the NAN, or the Neighborhood Area Network, which communicates with your neighbor's smart meters and their appliances to help you all balance out and get along together and so on with the energy you have available in your neighborhood. The WAN, the pink one here, is the basically just the wide area network at that point, which means that the data from your meters and your appliances is then broadcast into a broader context to be picked up and delivered back to the utility and back ultimately to the Department of Energy. Switch back to technocracy with me now. There's two senses of this word with a small t and a capital T. Let's do the small t first. Webster's defines technocracy as government by technicians. We can understand that. Management of society by technical experts. We can understand that. Think Obamacare, for instance, health care. Okay, this is ruling by committee, by software, by data, whatever. Technocracy with a capital T, however, includes that, but has a radically new concept that you need to get your hand around. Technocracy proper proposed a replacement economic system, not just new, shuffled, replacement economic system based on energy distribution and consumption run by engineers, scientists, and technicians. This is the new economic order, I am convinced at this point. You don't have to agree with me, but I'm convinced of that at this point, that this is the new international economic order that these yahoos had in mind from the get-go. It's just taken them about 30 years to get here to where they can circle us to do it. And I'll show you now a couple of things why. Technocracy, Inc. originated at Columbia University in 1932. It was founded by M. King Hubbert and Howard Scott. Howard Scott fell into anonymity after that. He was a nothing and a nobody, kind of a promoter. M. King Hubbert wrote the Technocracy Study Course in 1934. You can get that on the internet. It's available. It's available on my website too. And Hubbert later created the peak oil theory. You'll recognize that, and this is in 1954 because M. King Hubbert is basically claimed as one of the fathers of the eco movement. This was the guy, a brilliant geophysicist back in those days, just getting started. He was the guy that created the brainchild behind, if you will, Technocracy, Inc. and the doctrines of technocracy. Some of the highlights of technocracy. By nature, it produces volumes of inviolable regulations that are science-based. Remember that word, you already know it, science-based anything. It creates a totalitarian control in the end, but it is not socialism, communism, or fascism. And I hate to aggravate you on this, but I just have to lay it out. Be aggravated if you have to be. Our ladder is leaning up against the wrong tree on this. It is not communism, socialism, or fascism. It looks like it, but it's not. It's totalitarianism, and it's much worse. You'll see why in a minute. It seeks to replace the price-based economic system with an energy-based system. And think energy currency, think energy credits, think pricing everything in terms of the energy it takes to produce it rather than the free enterprise market system we have right now of currency. Here's some buzzwords. Science-based anything. I don't care what it is. If it's science-based, be suspicious. Sustainable development. You'll find that phrase and that word everywhere you go and read about smart grid or you read about technocracy. It has to do with climate change. You'll see that all the time as well. That's just a straw man, of course, to enforce things like the peak oil theory. Managed health care. You say, well, how does that come into it? Well, rationed health care is part of the total package that technocracy originally envisioned. I'll show you in a minute. You'll find that buzzwords cap and trade, carbon credit, stuff like that, even carbon currency. And then lastly, smart grid, intelligent power meters to deliver sustainable energy. There's the word, sustainable energy again. So those are some things you can keep in mind. Now, I want to show you from 1932, from their own documentation, from their own papers. Actually, this was from the technocracy study course itself. There were I think there were 6 requirements that they wrote down. You know how engineers, there's some engineers here, right? Who's an engineer? Who's a scientist engineer, right? You understand project requirements, don't you? Okay, when an engineer attacks something, he says, I want to do something. Okay, he sits down with a piece of paper and he starts writing down the requirements for the project. What do I need? Materials I need. What are the ideas? What has to be solved? That sort of thing. And so these guys, being scientists and engineers, they sat down and they wrote a very detailed list of requirements that would be necessary to implement technocracy in America, first in America, in the North American continent. And so the first thing, register on a continuous 24-hour per day basis the total net conversion of energy. Requirement number 1. You think smart grid for a minute, which you know, and you're going to see, Number 2, by means of the registration of energy converted and consumed, make possible a balanced load. You'll see the word balanced load all over the literature for smart grid and stuff. They're talking about balancing the load here and there, other countries, North America, South America, whatever, Europe. Number 3, provide a continuous inventory of production and consumption. Now, this is not just for energy. This is all production and all consumption. But the first blush is, of course, of energy. Number 4, provide a specific registration of the type, kind, etc., of all goods and services where produced and where used. This is 1932, folks. Are you kind of coming along with me on this? Are they doing this today? I mean, are we being, sliced and diced with the data and stuff? I mean, everybody seems to know everything. And lastly, provide specific registration of the consumption of each individual plus a record and description of the individual. Think Homeland Security, think NSA, think anything, almost think anything you want. They're circling the noose of this data collection around us, and now all of a sudden, out of the blue comes smart grid. Lo and behold, give the engineers a list of requirements and they're going to come up with a new bright idea. Lickety-split, okay? Whoever drew this is global green. You can see at the bottom of it is one industry photo. I don't know who the knucklehead green guy was that wrote this, but he put in an incandescent light bulb. Can you figure this, right? Okay, so even their message is not straight. This should not be an incandescent. Shame on them. We should send out the energy police and have them arrested immediately. You know what this is. This is PG&E Smart Meter. Wonderful little device. You can see there's no dials on it. It's all digital. And you can see, I just want to point out here, you can see the little ellipse right here, or you know, a little like a, you know what that means? You see that all over your Wi-Fi router at home and stuff, your cell phone. That is the Wi-Fi enablement where there's circuitry built in to broadcast the data from your meter wirelessly out to a collection point outside of your home. This is a wireless communicating device that communicates with the appliances on the inside of your home and the appliances and the meter and back to the data center. The controller circuit that is being placed into washers, dryers, thermostats, and so on looks something like this. There's several iterations of it now. This is an early one. This technology was developed by the Pacific Northwest National Laboratory in Washington State. That's a Department of Energy, not a subsidiary, but a unit of the Department of Energy, kind of like Lawrence Livermore Labs is down here. And the PNNL developed this technology, this controller chip, to be placed into all the appliances and the dryers and the thermostats and so on. And they sell this, license this technology to a firm in Texas to make this. And now, of course, all of the major manufacturers are just running nuts over this to put this chip into everything you buy. So I dare say in another year at least, you're not going to be able to buy a washer, dryer, a new thermostat, air conditioner, whatever, that doesn't have this technology embedded in it, and there is no way to turn it off within the device. This is another industry photo of what the home area network looks like, and you can see the meter out here on the side communicating with all the different things. A little solar in here to feed some power back. That's the token advantage to us, you see. Well, if you have a solar panel, you can sell the power back to the power company and bank some up. They don't tell you that, you know, it either costs $50,000 to, you know, do your whole house, or if you put in a panel this size, it's going to get you about maybe 3 cents a day if you're lucky. But this is one depiction. Here's another one. This is a little bit more detailed, and this is another industry photo again, something from them. But you see they got factories up here and substations and the windmills and the energy storage. Here's oil way down here in the bottom. Flywheels, that's a crackpot idea. Central's generation and, you know, hydropower and all that kind of stuff. Well, it's just another picture. And here we are back to this one again. I'm not going to explain this again because I already did. But the idea of the network is important here, as you'll see. Oh, here's another good one too. This is pretty well detailed as well, and I put these. I think these pictures are all in my paper, so you can go look at them and study them a little bit. You kind of need to sit down with this and just study a little bit and see what are they talking about, you know. But in each case, you can see the industrial gateway. This would represent the power, you know, the information going out. And here you have the home gateway, and there's another up here, a building gateway, you know, controlling smart buildings and so on. Okay? And this is what makes it all happen. This is the grid router that sits out on the poles and stuff. Instead of, you still have the converters, but this grid router is going to be the device that actually routes all the data back to maybe probably via fiber optic cable that puts all the data back to the utility and then all the way back to the Department of Energy and even beyond there. So a grid router is an important aspect of this. When we see summits coming up called things like smart grid interoperability, you start to get a little nervous. You know, okay, what is that? Well, I understand smart grid PG&E. What are we talking about here? This is a depiction of the National Smart Grid, folks. This is their picture, not mine. I couldn't draw a picture like this. My life depended on it. This is the idea, and if you know anything about the internet, you might get an idea. Gee, that looks a lot like the internet. You know, it kind of has a lot of these data centers and the routing places around the country, like your email gets from here to New York. How does it get there? Well, through a network like this. Well, what if one router is down? Well, it figures out how to reroute another way, and it goes another way. Okay, there's probably, you know, hundreds of thousands of different ways to get there, but it eventually does. This is the intended national smart grid that will tie our entire country together into a single, what looks like a network. I'll describe that in a second. And if that isn't a mind blower, I just don't know what can, you know, you got to get your head around this. This is technocracy. This is technocracy. Secondly, there are plans 50% all the way through now for creating a North American smart grid. This was one of the 22 working groups, by the way, that the Security and Prosperity Partnership cut loose with the Department of Energies to talk with the other countries to tie the smart grid together between Mexico, Canada, and the United States for one contiguous policy unit. You understand what I'm saying here? In other words, the network that looked like this, just overlay that on North America and you'll have the next level up of what's happening. This is a little bit behind, but it's coming very soon, and they're already, actually there's some elements of it are already in place, and the negotiations are already a done deal. They're merely working on the build out at this point. This has all happened in the last 3 years. In 2009, when the economic financial meltdown happened, and President Obama authorized the stimulus package, recovery stimulus package, several $billion, $3.9 billion were ponied up to be put on the smart grid, just summarily. Nobody even paid attention to it at that time. What is all this? Oh, Al Gore, you know, we're all going to die tomorrow, wacko stuff. And, you know, but there goes $3.8 billion. Come to find out that the other industrialized countries in the world did exactly the same thing we did. Go figure this one for a bit. They did the same thing. Canada, Mexico, countries in South America, China, Great Britain, Germany, Switzerland, all across the world. They spent stimulus money to kickstart smart grid in their own countries. Does that tell you something? Who orchestrated that? Okay, who gave them simultaneously idea to do it with taxpayer money, not industry money? Yeah, okay. And now, lastly, the smart grid is going global. This absolutely blew my mind when I saw this, because it reminded me sort of the highway map of the North American Union when NASCO published that crazy highway map. Just the picture of it was enough to set you in flames, because how could they draw this? This is the global smart grid that's intended. This is a dimension map looking from the top down. The area here is the North Pole, and it's looking down from the top of the world. This map was invented, by the way, by R. Buckminster Fuller, a technocrat at heart. He died several years ago. But Buckminster Fuller was the guy who not only conceived the map, he also conceived the idea for a global energy network. And this is the map that's published on the website that I'm going to tell you about. Smart grid has gone global. Oh my gosh. Smart grid's Europe. And you notice the dates on this, 2010 and 11. Asia, 2011. Smart grid, 2011 in China. Smart grids Africa, Australia, Brazil. What else we got? India, China, Middle East, North Africa. It's gone global. Holy moly. And they're having even more conferences today, and when you go and look at some of these conferences, where do all these people come from? They're just, you know, we're talking thousands and thousands of people that come to these things. One website that's key in this puts it this way. This is from their website. There is a new World Wide Web emerging right before our eyes. It is a global energy network, and like the internet, it will change our culture, society, and how we do business. More importantly, it will alter how we use, transform, and exchange energy. Technocracy, folks. 100% technocracy. There is no energy supply problem. There is an energy distribution problem. And the emerging solution is a new World Wide Web of electricity. This is how they're going to get us. Wired Magazine, 2001. Not a prophet necessarily, but these ideas have been kind of coming along for some time. There was no movement on it, but listen what Wired wrote. The best minds in electricity R&D have a plan. Every node in the power network of the future will be awake, responsive, adaptive, price-smart, eco-sensitive, real-time, flexible, humming, and interconnected with everything else. You see, the network we know today connects people, doesn't it? email, videos, conference, whatever, okay? The internet that they're talking about connects inanimate objects. Your washer to a computer program, to the neighbor's washer, to the neighbor, you know, whatever. Inanimate objects being connected together, but it's an internet nonetheless. And here's the work in progress on the globe, just so you know. The red lines indicate portions that are still not completed. They're being built out. The yellow lines are the areas that are already completed, in their mind, already completed. They got a little bit of a way to go, but considering they've only been after this for maybe 2 to 3 years, they're doing pretty good. Good project for their point of view. And all the people you expect, the endorsements you'd expect to be involved with this, it's all the same crowd. Okay, that Bill has talked about, Phil has talked about, you know, all the same people are in it. I won't even mention them, but you see that guy right in the middle there. His face is everywhere. That guy's got a good PR agent, doesn't he? What utilities have learned from smart meter tests, Wall Street Journal cut this article in 2010. This is a year after the money was released, and so some smart journalist got the idea to do a follow-up story. This is what the utilities learned from these initial tests. Number one, they learned that a principal goal is to enable utilities to restructure rate plans. Holy crud. You know, now we're all in trouble. Yeah, restructure the rate plan. All of us will end up paying 20, 30, 40% more within a year or two if they implement this. A principal goal, they learned, is to force consumer behavior to change. Well, I guess maybe they couldn't do it through all the sustainable development nonsense. They're cutting to the quick when they start talking power, but they're interested in forcing consumer behavior to change. And some utility executives, if you can believe this, anticipated in fear of consumer rebellion. No, that couldn't happen, could it? Oh, yes, it could. Here's an unsavory group. I hope that's nobody in this group, but here, Santa Cruz County says no to smart meters. And here's another sign, something like that, you know, and there's not too many of them, but they're right in front of the PG&E office, and God bless their little soul sitting out there. These might be the same people who were picketing Dr. Stan a week earlier and Michael Shaw over at Freedom Advocates, I don't know, but they figured out that smart meters are not good for us, okay? It's just interesting. And here's another one a little bit more organized. They got signs, right? Yeah. Yeah. Okay, let's vote. Which do you like better? Do you like this better, or does this look better? Okay. You got it. Let me give you a few concluding thoughts. I'm sorry to rush through this, but this is all the time we got, and you're going to have to dig into it. This is new, folks. Smart grid is the enablement of technocracy. You just have to see that. The requirements from the 1930s match perfectly with what they're doing in practice today. It's a perfect match. It can't happen by accident. All of technocracy's original requirements, and I say all, for energy-based system are being met today. Technocracy seeks a radically different economic and political system leading to scientific dictatorship. You have to study technocracy to find this out. Global enablers of what's going on with technocracy around the world include organizations like the venerable World Economic Forum. They're big into it. They have a sub-website dedicated to World Smart Grid. And the IEEE, that's the engineering, electronics, and electrical engineers of the world, professional society. They are the ones that are writing the specifications for the global smart grid. They have 385,000 engineers belonging to their membership around the world, and they are on board with this 120% to make it happen. I kid you not. Smart grid is fostered by executive fiat with no congressional oversight. In any country, or parliaments, if they have parliament, nobody's looking at this. It's executive fiat. It's been done by the government. And I will suggest that who is behind the executive branch pulling the strings on this, I will argue in another talk sometime that it is the members of the Trilateral Commission that are orchestrating this to get the government to spend taxpayer money. Hey, why spend your own money if you can get them to do it? Technocrats M. King Hubbard and R. Buckminster Fuller are the founding fathers of the technocratic movement today and resulting smart grid, and their intent was crystal clear. You have to go read their intent, perhaps, to find out what they were thinking, but we have no right to second guess what they thought the movement would do. Just like people read Karl Marx today, if you want to understand communism and socialism, you have to read the technocratic documents, the foundation documents, to understand what's going on. Two people who wrote about technocracy, you can go read these books again. Aldous Huxley wrote Brave New World, what year? You want to know where he got his material? Directly from the technocratic movement that was just gaining steam, Technocracy, Inc. In 1932, there's even an internet movie, or internet version of an old movie that was created about Brave New World. It was a scientific dictatorship where everything was controlled. George Orwell in 1949 wrote 1984, and that book looked back to technocracy. I read both of these in high school. I didn't have a clue. It was just science fiction. I didn't have any idea. But these books explore the philosophy. That is, they took the philosophy and they extended it out as best they could. This is where it's going. Technocracy makes no provision for private property. Zero. There is no ability to accumulate wealth in a technocratic system, society. Everything is controlled by energy, production, consumption, and everything is controlled from the state top down. Whoever the engineers are controlling it, they're not elected, whatever, but they have the power to control the entire society. And so you say, well, this is not very good news, is it? It ain't over till it's over. But in the meantime, remember, smart grid is watching you. This was Big Brother.
Now remember, this was all stuff that we've been warned about. Eisenhower, I mentioned that many times, his farewell speech, to beware of a scientific technological elite. I would urge you to make changes. Jesus sees what's going on. The more he has to get involved to change things, the worse it's going to be for us. And we definitely need to stop sacrificing children on the altar of lust and convenience. Because Jesus sees what's going on. There is going to be change. Many, many changes, and it's going to be brutal. Prepare yourself. One thing you can do is to get yourself educated through my website. You can also try to reach out to other people. Tell them about my website. Tell them about this show. These are the times when the shows are on. Monday from 6 to 7, channel 77. Friday, 1 to 2 in the afternoon. And Thursday night, Friday morning, midnight to 1 a.m. And remember what my Sioux brothers say. Matakawe oisin. We are all related. Have a good week, and may God bless you.